What's up, everybody? GeauxBurns going over details regarding the all-new survival mode for Fallout 4. By the way, the article is linked below in the description section, and it's going to be a nice long video because there's a lot to go over regarding what Bethesda is doing with survival mode. FYI, if you're playing Fallout 4 on Steam, you can jump on Steam and grab the survival mode beta, try it out, and then be sure to give Bethesda your feedback in the survival mode beta forum. And some of the items discussed below may change or have already been changed. So that is what we're going over concerning survival mode in Fallout 4. The big premise of the survival mode's change is tough choices. At a high level, Bethesda wanted to force players to make interesting choices. They did that by bringing more contrasting motivations to Fallout 4 by using the type of circular system you might find in a game like Dark Souls, by which they mean two or more systems that push against each other. This resulted in four major pillars for survival mode. One is strategy, intensifying decisions involving when to get into combat versus when to avoid it, and to also make you think more about what gear to take into combat. Then back up those decisions with faster, more brutal fights. Number two, exploration, slowing down the pace of the game and encouraging players to explore the nooks and crannies of the world. Number three, resource management, balancing out items in the world that make it too easy to acquire or hoard, giving players more to consider when planning their current loadout. And number four, role-playing, increasing the realism of the world and the issues one might face there. Here's how these goals are realized with some of the big changes in survival mode, which, by the way, is in beta on Steam. Eventually, it's going to be available for everybody, and maybe a month from now or less or more, depending on when Bethesda gets the revamped version of survival mode tweaked, fine-tuned, and polished for release. By the way, this is going to be a patch. This is not going to cost you anything whenever the revamped version of survival mode does finally come out to Fallout 4 on Xbox One, PlayStation 4, and PC. So expect the survival mode revamp patch to come out sooner or later. All right, so here's some of the changes that's going to happen in survival mode. First off, saving with sleep. Manual quick saving and almost all autosaves will be disabled. To save your game, you'll need to find a bed to sleep in for at least an hour. This means your fallback options are reduced, forcing you to be more concerned about what you are walking into and whether you're prepared to handle it. Some fights you may deem above your level and decide to avoid. Other fights you may decide to go all in. Scouting and gathering information to make this decision can be fun in its own right. Also, when beds are your only means of saving, they become the holy grail, with the level of importance tied to them. You will scour the earth to find the closest bed to your next chosen encounter, and in doing so, you will likely discover things you might have otherwise missed. Next big change is no more fast travel. That's right, fast travel will be disabled in survival mode. If you wish to be somewhere, you'll have to get there the old-fashioned way. In other words, exploration is now mandatory, exposing more of the Commonwealth secret gems. This will also take you out of your comfort zone, but encourage you to take advantage of the well-placed workshops throughout the wasteland. And while charisma may seem less important to your immediate survival, there are certain charisma-based perks that will make managing your bases less painful. Next, increased lethality. Now you deal, but also take more damage. You can increase the damage you deal even further with adrenaline, more than in a moment. This makes combat more dangerous, which in turn slows you down and gets you to think about what you're walking into. Combine this with being much harder to save your game, and suddenly each encounter becomes more tense and dire. Combat itself has become more strategic because both you and your enemies are more powerful. This means fights are about trying to use positioning and timing to get your shots in without taking the enemy hits. This has an even bigger effect on melee players like me, who will now need to use their block parry to keep themselves from taking damage during fights. And I'm really good at like slashing and hacking my foes. Not so much when it comes to blocking, as some of you may have noticed in last week's Automatron Let's Play that I did, all 4 episodes. Some of it was brutal. Moving on, while this change raises skill necessary to play, those who opt into survival know what they're getting into. And obviously, I'm probably not going to play this new survival mode because I feel like I get my ass kicked enough because I'm not the best player out there. But for everyone that enjoys Fallout 4, that wants more of a challenge, more of a struggle, the new survival mode might be right up your alley. Now let's get back into some of the other changes coming to Fallout 4 with the updated version of survival mode. Facing the unknown. Threats, unless added by recon scope, no longer display on the compass, and at the distance in which locations of interest will appear have been significantly shortened. You can no longer rush through the world, knowing what's around the next corner. At the same time, you'll likely explore even more in order to ferret out any and all locations. So in the new survival mode, you definitely don't want to rush in head first because you're going to get murdered. The next change we touched on a moment ago, but we're going to go in more detail now, is revolved around adrenaline. Now, adrenaline is a new perk that comes standard with survival mode. It provides a bonus to your damaged output and is increased by getting kills. Every 5 kills, increase your adrenaline rank and adds 5% bonus damage of up to 50% extra damage at the max rate of 10. The extra damage is alluring. Adrenaline motivates the types of stupid decisions that always lead to the best water cooler story. So that's how adrenaline will work in Fallout 4 survival mode. By the way, sleeping removes anywhere from 2 to all 10 ranks of adrenaline depending on the time you've slept. Next is wellness, exhaustion, hunger, and thirst. Yes, those are definitely going to be a factor in the revamped survival mode to Fallout 4. You'll find it difficult to survive without taking proper care of yourself. You must stay hydrated, fed, and rested to remain combat ready. Going for extended periods of time without food, water, or a good night's sleep will begin to adversely affect your health, hurting your special stats, adding to your fatigue, lowering your immunity, and eventually causing physical damage to you. This will affect every decision you make because you have to consider your overall and ever-changing health. The drive to simply stay alive might push you into new and unexpected adventures. At the very least, you'll likely find yourself hunting for valuable meats, triggering encounters with dangerous wildlife, but not everything you consume is good for you. Certain items in the game now have negative consequences to balance out their positive effects. These counter effects may make you thirsty, hungry, or tired, and possibly even hurt your immunity, leaving you vulnerable to illness. The next change coming to Fallout 4 survival mode is fatigue. Fatigue mostly comes from being tired. Both hunger and thirst also affect it. Fatigue works like radiation, but affects your action points rather than your hit points. The more fatigue you've built, the less AP you'll have for actions like sprinting and VATS, and the amount of fatigue you've accumulated is displayed in red in your AP bar. Now, when it comes to survival mode, everything matters. It's not just the big changes that alter the way you play survival mode in Fallout 4. Bethesda is also making adjustments to all kinds of items and conditions. First off, it's bed types. The type of bed you're sleeping in limits the length of time you are able to sleep, thereby limiting how much you can recover. Real beds, which are hard to come by in the world, offer the highest bonuses for sleeping. This rewards you for working out of a home base or even spinning the caps for a good night's sleep. Also, finding a sleeping bed in the middle of a dungeon will feel great. Finding a dirty mattress will feel even better. And finding a real bed will feel like winning the lottery. So you know all the spots where you can use workshops in the game? It's time to start building beds everywhere you can in all your settlements, all these little locations here and there, because that is going to be the only way that you can not only save the game and the only spots you'll be able to get a good night's sleep, which has an obvious effect on you in the survival mode for Fallout 4. Next, of course, is illness and antibiotics. There are several different illnesses that can affect you. Your base chance of getting sick increases as your average wellness decreases. Antibiotics can be crafted bought are found alongside doctors that can heal your current illnesses. Now, certain things in the world, such as taking hits by certain creatures, using chems, may immediately affect you illness-wise. Also, stim packs are no longer the fix-all miracle drug. So make sure you're prepared when it comes to dealing with illness and antibiotics. Next is immune deficiency. Items that cleanse your body of rads come with the cost of making you tired and temporarily damaging your immunity, leaving you more vulnerable to illness than usual. By adding a negative effect to RadAway, Bethesda is pushing you to only use RadAway when you really need it. Next is slower healing. In survival, restorative items like stim packs and food recover your health at a significantly reduced rate. You'll need to time your healing precisely if you hope it will last. Crippled limbs is another issue. Now, crippled limbs will no longer auto-heal after combat. They will remain crippled until healed by a stim pack or slept off. This not only makes combat tougher and more strategic, but also puts a further tax on stim packs. Carry weight. That's right, your total carry weight has been reduced, and items like ammo and stim packs now come with weight. And I can hear the boo birds now. Alright, so bullets and shells have a small amount of weight. Each varies by caliber, while missiles and mini nukes are quite heavy. Everything you carry now must be carefully chosen, and you'll have to weigh power over volume when it comes to things like ammo. Painful encumbrance is the next issue. Exceeding your weight reduces your overall wellness, quickly building fatigue and will eventually cripple your legs. You can't hoard a whole bunch of items, then make the slow, long trip back home, which, to be fair, isn't that fun anyways. Just set the loot aside or give it to your companion and be free of all that extra weight. Now, remember a few seconds ago whenever I made a comment about giving stuff to your companions? Well, I spoke too soon. Companion costs, another issue with the new survival mode for Fallout 4. Carry weight for companions has been decreased, and they will no longer automatically get back up if down during combat. Instead, they will return home if abandoned without being healed. So do not hog your stim packs and don't turn your friends into mules. Likewise, if you already downloaded Automatron, your new robot companions will need to be closely monitored, so if you forget to use your robot repair kits, they will return home. And the final change mentioned to the survival mode in Fallout 4 in this article, which is once again in the description section in case you want to read it over yourself, is enemy and loot repopulation. Locations you've cleared will now repopulate with new enemies and loot, but at a significantly slower rate. So head out into the world and find yourself some new locations to loot as well as pillage. So there's a lot of changes coming to survival mode in Fallout 4, and even more death and little things that are going to be added to the new survival mode for you to discover. By the way, as I've mentioned at the beginning, the beta is currently available on Steam, so you can try it out if you have Fallout 4 on PC. Afterwards, you can send Bethesda your feedback to their survival mode beta forum, sharing your views, your thoughts, your opinions, and 2 cents regarding the new survival mode for Fallout 4. But if you don't have Steam for Fallout 4, if you're like me playing it on Xbox One or PlayStation 4, fear not, sooner or later the new revamped version of survival mode patch will come to Fallout 4, and it's going to be refined, it's going to be exciting, especially if you're into a real challenge when it comes to Fallout 4. It's coming to all platforms within a month or so. So fear not, everybody, for the Xbox One, PlayStation 4, and PC. Survival is going to become very interesting, challenging, and maybe a little too real in Fallout 4.